What's going on, everybody? Sebwars here, and today we are going to be discussing the different ranks of the Imperial military of the Galactic Empire. So, let's get right into the video. The first rank is Midshipmen. These were the lowest rank officers who were still in training. They had two squares, most often red and blue. Midshipmen would never have seen live combat until promoted or graduated to a higher ranking. Next is a Lieutenant. The Lieutenant Commission Officer wore 4 insignia squares and were the most common ranking in the Galactic Empire. Almost everyone on ship would be a Lieutenant except for the Captain and Admiral. Next is a Captain. This ranking wore 6 squares. A Captain's primary role was commanding a singular ship, however, some attained to other roles. Next up is Admiral. Admirals normally had 8 squares, however, it depended on the size of their fleet. As you probably now know, they were in charge of a whole fleet of starships. They had complete control over captains as well. Next is High Admiral. This is a step up from an admiral. These officers had 12 squares. They had control of an entire sector fleet. Of course, they were higher and therefore in charge of admirals, guiding and overseeing every one of their moves. Next is Grand Admiral. They wore 12 squares, 3 of which were yellow. Their power varied from the controlling of a few fleets within a sector to an entire region. The Grand Admiral would also make large decisions that would be stated as orders towards High Admirals. One of the most well-known Grand Admirals was the one and only Grand Admiral Thrawn. Next are Moffs. This ranking wore 12 insignia plaques and had almost full control over an entire sector. Usually it would take either a great achievement or years of training to be promoted to this rank. Despite having no yellow squares, they were above Grand Admirals. Next are Grand Moffs. These had the same squares as Grand Admirals, 12 and 3 of them yellow. They had the most control in the Galactic Empire, taking control over specific areas like the Outer Rim. The most notable Grand Moff was Tarkin. Next we have an officer. They had a singular strip of 4 blue squares and simply assisted generals. They had a very minimal role to class it as a rank. Next up is a general. This army ranking wore 8 squares and had the power over an entire army. They were also responsible for tactics and what troops to use in the situations they faced. The general wouldn't be on the battlefield but simply commanding, normally off planet. Next is a High General. With a singular strip of only 6 red squares, High Generals commanded armies over an entire system. They had a lot of power, but they still had the answer to a couple people of the Galactic Empire. Finally is the Grand General. Grand Generals were almost exactly the same as Grand Admirals. They wore 12 squares with 3 yellow. However, instead of being in control of a fleet, Grand Generals were in complete control of armies across an enormous radius. So yeah guys, that's the Galactic Empire's military explained. I mean their rankings explained. So yeah, let me know if you learned anything new in this video, and also drop a like if you enjoyed. It helps out the channel a ton. So yeah guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and may the Force be with you all.